Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you, and this is the next of my series of videos on advanced Tyranid tactics, advice from the hive mind, looking at individual units that are particularly good within the competitive scene, and today we're going to focus on Biovores. Right guys, before we get started, if you do enjoy this video, please click that subscribe button and the like. It helps me tons, and if you like what I'm doing and you want to support me further, you can pop over to Patreon and become a backer. All the patrons are listed at the end of every video, and you guys are absolute bosses. Thank you very much for your support. You help me do what I do. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm quite active there. You can check me out there and see all the work in progress stuff that I'm working on, and I also post on Facebook. I tend to post news on whether I'm going to be streaming live on Wargaming Weekly on Facebook, so you can catch me there. But anyway, jumping into this video, and we're going to talk about Biovores today. A really cool unit. I've got my Tyranid Codex here. Jump and get yours if you want to kind of go through it and reference with me. And with all these videos, I'm kind of expecting that you know the basics. If you don't, not a problem at all. You'll still hopefully get some good stuff from it. We don't go into detail with real basics. We look at more the advanced tactics and how to really get the best out of these guys. We're also looking at units that tend to be competitive units at the moment. Again, building that real killer Tyranid army. So the Biovore itself, a really interesting unit, and does something that no other unit in the Tyranid Codex does, and is a very, very unique character, or unique unit should I say, in the 40k universe, if you like. Again, acts slightly differently from most other units. So he's a heavy support character, and he's very much a defensive, long-range artillery piece within the Tyranid army. What does he do? So basically, a Biovore chucks out spore mines across the board. Nice long range, 48 inches. Just a one shot, but really, really long range, which is great. Doesn't need line of sight, which again is awesome. That was FAQ'd, so you know when you don't see it necessarily. Just having a little look whether I think it might have even been updated in the actual codex. I don't even think it says in there, but anyway, you don't need line of sight, so if you're unsure about that, don't need it, which is cool. And it's a unit that can hide away and chuck out those long range shooting attacks. As I said, just the one shot, which can put people off, but bear in mind that one shot can do a mortal wound, which potentially other things are maybe struggling at dealing with in Von saves, units that are out of range. This is a really good solid unit to deal some damage to a unit that is very, very resilient, and it supports with other things like smite and really offensive stuff that is doing the damage. These guys will really lend a support there. They're not bad there as far as from a stat line. They have got 4 wounds, which is pretty good. Toughness 4 is okay, and a 4-up save is very average. These guys do have the infantry keyword, so it means if you have got them hiding at the back of the board, which is where they're always going to be, you want to try and find them a bit of terrain to get them all the way in, to make sure that they are benefiting from a +1. That's always going to be helpful. You want to be running with that if you can. Just putting them on a 3-up is going to make them that little bit survivable if things can get to them through shooting. That's going to help them quite a lot. But hopefully these guys aren't going to be touched too much, because you're going to have other units that are very much pushing up in your opponent's face, and the Biovores are not going to be a target they're going to be able to get to easily, or a target that potentially is target priority number 1. So bearing in mind these guys are only getting 1 shot a pop. You're taking them in units of 1 to 3, but bear in mind they're only getting 1 shot a pop. Why are they really worth taking? Why are you going to take these in a competitive list? Well, the good thing about the Biovore is they're quite versatile with different little tricks that you can do with them, and that's what I want to really focus in with you today and talk about those kind of tricks that you can do. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about spore mines. So spore mines are what the Biovores launch. Now if they hit their target and explode, then that's going to do you mortal wound straight away. If they miss, they then will create spore mines. Those spore mines do not cost reinforcement points, and let me kind of just let you know that now. So don't let anyone tell you they do. It's quite clearly written that they don't, and that's that's widely understood. But there are still a few people out there that are unsure, and they might quibble about that. They do not cost you reinforcement points, so it's a great way of getting little units, little interference stuff out on the board. Now spawn mines, they just die in a real, just a very chilled breeze. They fall down, but they are still a unit that the enemy needs to potentially target. They are still a unit that is potentially stopping units dropping in, deep striking. They're still a unit that potentially is the closest target for things like smite and weapons that have to target the closest unit. So from that point of view, don't discount these spawn mines that are missing the target. That in itself is a very valid tactic, and we will talk about that. So what you're doing is, first of all, with these Biovores, you're looking at hitting high priority, high key, high value targets with them. These are not a unit to be going for chaff majority of the time, and as I said, we will go back into the reasons why you would potentially target chaff, but on the whole, these are not targeting big bubble wraps that are wrapping around key units in their deployment zone. These are targeting tanks, stuff with high armor value, stuff with good invuln saves, that are potentially out of range of your stuff first turn that you want to cause some damage on. So these are things, so you're going against Astra Militarum, these are the things that are chipping away at those tank commanders. These are the things that are going after things like Magnus, Mortarium. These are the things that are hitting those key units behind the chaff walls, and by doing that you can do a couple of things. One, by hitting them, you're going to do those mortal wounds, because every hit that you make, so they only hit on 4s, but every hit that you make on anything other than a 1 is doing a mortal wound, and if you hit a 6, it is doing D3 mortal wounds. And you'd be surprised just throughout a game how many 6s you'll get, and actually how many potential mortal wounds you can take off those key units. And those just constant chipping away, potentially taking things into lower brackets that have more than one, will start to really kind of buy you time, and will start to really concern your opponent and really mess with their brain around their target priorities. So just by hitting those targets straight away, you're doing great work. But also what potentially you're doing is, by missing those key targets, you're managing to find placement points for those spore mines. And by finding placement points for them spore mines behind chaff walls, in amongst your enemy, what you're also then making is you're making those key units waste valuable shooting on killing those spore mines, because if their spore mines are left alone, then next turn you're going to move them in and they're going to explode and do more mortal wounds, as well as the next lot of Biovores that are shooting at them. So they're the targets that you're generally going for to try and do that kind of damage to. The other targets that you're going for, particularly if you get first turn, and what quite often will happen is a lot of very good, strong, competitive armies will take things like scouts, rangers, nurglings, whatever it might be, to create space. Now, they'll create space and they'll also block you off. The blocking you off bit is not something you can necessarily do anything about, but what you can do is you can cut down on the create space piece, because what you can do is, by missing units, by shooting at those units that are sitting midfield that are blocking you off and creating space for themselves, and then missing them with Biovores, then you can drop your spore mines close to those scouts, those rangers, and then suddenly you've got a 9-inch denial from that point. Because they aren't able to get rid of those spore mines until they get to their shooting phase, they're unable to deep strike their key units into those placements, which suddenly has created you more time and more space, because not only have you got your 9-inch denial area, you've also got theirs as well, because where you put units in their deployment zone, not in their deployment zone, in their sector where they want to drop things in. So again, you're starting to deny them space, you're starting to deny them the flexibility of where they deploy their key value units. So just because this is a chaffy little scout unit, actually sometimes targeting those is another great tactic to use these Biovores. And sometimes it's so important that you cut that space out. What it's even worth doing is moving those Biovores, so you're then a -1 to hit. You're already hitting on 4s, now you're hitting on 5s. Some of these armies are even giving you a -1, so then suddenly you're hitting on 6s. So when you're hitting on 6s, you're almost guaranteeing creating spore mines. If you've got a unit of 3 Biovores, suddenly that's 3 spore mines created. Now yes, you're not going to be able to really spread them out, but you'll be surprised just how much space and denial area you can create with 3 spore mines that are deploying just off the back of those scout units or those rangers units. And then suddenly you're really starting to buy yourself some time, and you're starting to break their tactic. And that's what these guys are very, very good at doing. They're very good at really starting to pull apart your opponent's tactics around movement. And as most good players will tell you, movement within 40k is one of the key areas. Just being able to plan where you go and dictate the space, whether it's around objectives or it's around just taking apart your opponent, or in the right area of the board where you need to, being able to concentrate fire, assault in one area, and being taken that away is such a key and vital and great tactic to use. So they're the two tactics to use with these Biovores. So either you are going for your big targets, and you're trying to chip away those key wounds, which will then soften them up for other units that are maybe going to struggle to take them out as quickly. So a flying hive tyrant that's doing loads and loads of damage against some of these very high toughness, great save units, maybe they're starting to come a little bit unstuck and they're not getting the wounds through as quickly as they would like. These Biovores are then starting to chip things away, then combine with some smites and psychic powers, and you're starting to bring those key units into either a manageable area because they're into their second or third bracket, but also you're starting to put the pressure on them and give you the opportunity to dispatch those high value targets. So that's how they are very, very good. They're also great at a camping unit. They'll sit on an objective for you because they don't need line of sight. They can tuck in there, out of sight, out of mind, sit on that objective. Is that always the best place for them? Well, probably not. You probably want something else sitting on an objective, because what you don't really want is you don't want these guys being target number 1, because these guys will do work for you all game long, and you almost want to take the heat off them. If you're really doing everything with these guys, you're piling on pressure, you're doing damage, you're denying space, and you're holding objectives, what's going to happen to your opponent is they're going to start to get switched onto this, and they're going to start going after these guys heavily. And actually you don't necessarily want you to do it, because they will go down quickly. You'd rather them go after high toughness value units like your Flyrants that they'll really have to pile in a lot of pressure to try and deal with, and leave these Biovores just doing damage and doing key work for you at the backfield, and doing that for the whole game. So if you've got something else to sit on an objective, something else is probably a better bet, but these will do that job as well if you need them to. So how do you kind of build these guys? What's the best way to do it? So I think you always want, if you're going to take Biovores, don't just take singles, take a unit of 3. 100% take a unit of 3. But if you want to take more than one, and particularly what I use them for is I use them because they are the cheapest heavy support choice. So when I'm building my brigade, I want to fill that brigade as cheaply as possible but with good units. So I will use one unit of 3 because I really love them and they do great work, and then I will take 2 singles. That then gives me 5 Biovores, which is a potential lot of spore mines on the table and potentially a lot of damage. And that's how I like to take them. But you can go heavier than that. You can start taking multiple units of 3. My one warning around taking multiple units of 3 and potentially around spamming Biovores is, in your mind you might think, well, that's amazing, I'm just going to take loads of units of Biovores, they're going to do the work. But what you need to start to bear in mind when you do that is there are very few tables that will give you enough space to hide more than 2, possibly 3 at most units. If you're playing ITC, which is what I love, you've got a chance that you might be able to find that space because of the rules of not being able to see through bottom floors of ruins, and the concentration on heavily terrain table, which I think is awesome. But if you're playing in a lot of tournaments, particularly a lot of our UK ETC style or standard GW tournaments, terrain is there, and there's a lot of terrain on the table, but there's not much line of sight blocking terrain, and even some of the tables are quite sparse, and true line of sight does make these guys suffer slightly. So to kind of hedge your bets, unless you really know the kind of tournament or the meta or the kind of tables you're playing on, you probably don't want to go that many units of these, because you start doing that and you're focusing on heavily utilizing these guys, and then you come to a table that they can get really found out, and then you're in trouble. It's for exactly the same reason I wouldn't recommend that you taking too many Hive Guard, because again, they're so dependent on being able to be hidden, otherwise they're going to go down quickly because they're not that resilient. So your best bet is probably to take exactly that. Fill up your brigade by taking a unit of 3 and then 2 singles, or potentially if you want to sort of space it out a little bit, there's nothing to say between taking a couple of units of 2, whatever it might be, spread them out a little bit if you want to do that. I quite like having a unit of 3 and 2 singles for the main reason of the stratagem to allow a unit to shoot twice, which is what I want to kind of come on to in a minute. So that's kind of how to use the Biovores. That's your tactics around them. Now, and we talked a little bit about how to take them and what sort of size units. Now, what sort of hive fleets? Right, so the best hive fleet overall to take them in is Kronos, 100%. Kronos will give you the best bang for your buck because you're re-rolling ones. So these guys are always sitting still generally, unless you want to purposely create the spore mines. So if you want these to do damage, what you're going to do is you're going to leave them stationary, they're then re-rolling ones. That makes that 4 plus a little bit better, because you're 4 plus re-rolling ones. That suddenly bring that statistics of getting those mortal wounds up a lot more. So that's where they're best at. There's not really any other hive fleets that benefit them particularly. Probably the next one is going to be Leviathan. Leviathan is going to mean that if they're within synapse range, then they're going to get a 6-up after save. You might want that because you're probably going to want a synapse creature quite close to make sure they're shooting at what they want, but still your Kronos is by far a better bet to take these guys in, particularly a heavily weighted Biovore army, one that you're utilising that tactic. You can also take them in Jormungandr, having a +1 to your cover is quite tasty. But again, these guys are hiding. They're hopefully not even going to get seen, so that's probably again not your best tactic with them. So generally, you're taking them in a Kronos detachment. Now, as far as stratagems, I'm going to touch on it again. So basically, the real stratagem that becomes great for these is being able to shoot them again for 2 CPs, because with those mortal wound output, suddenly you're having something that hits on 4s, re-rolling 1s with 3 shots. Suddenly that goes up to 6 shots. Again, hit on 4s, re-rolling 1s. You'll be surprised how many mortal wounds you're going to do with that. Particularly, you get lucky, you roll 1, 2, 6s. You got a 1 in 6 chance, so you're going to get the chances are you're probably going to get 1 6 in that, and then who knows, you might get that lovely 5 or 6 to get 3 mortal wounds. And if you really need to do that damage, you can command point it for when you get that D3 to make sure you get that 2 or 3 mortal wounds, which is then really doing some damage to your opponent. So that's the way to take them. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you've enjoyed this advanced tactics on Biovores. Let me know if I've missed anything, if there's something that you use them for, or there's some key tactic that I'm not using, because I'm always learning all the time, and if you've got a tactic of how it's really working for you, let me know. If you're really finding them no good, I'm really interested to find out as well. Maybe you think they're absolute rubbish, you've tried them, you think something else works so much better for you. Let me know again, I'll be really interested. And also guys, I've already recorded quite a few of these tactical videos, but if there's one particularly that you want to see next, again, chuck that in the comments, because if I hear enough people saying I really want to see this, I'll try and put that up in the order list and get that to you sooner rather than later. But thanks so much for watching. As I said, please do click that subscribe button, click that like button, share it with all your friends if they're interested in Tyranids. And again, thank you so much for anyone that supported me on Patreon. But until the next video, guys, I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.